What if the greatest secrets ever given to humanity didn't come from God, but from beings who were never supposed to speak? What if the knowledge we call civilization was actually a curse in disguise? There is a story buried so deep in the ancient records of the faith that most people will live their entire lives without ever hearing it told the way it was originally written. Not the sanitized version, not the one trimmed down to fit neatly inside a Sunday morning sermon. The original account, raw, unsettling, and staggering in its implications, of angels who descended to earth and chose to share with human beings knowledge that heaven itself had sealed away. This is not mythology. This is not folklore dressed in religious clothing. The Book of Enoch, one of the oldest and most extraordinary texts connected to the biblical tradition, describes in precise and haunting detail what happened when divine beings crossed a boundary that was never meant to be crossed. And what they left behind did not just change the ancient world, it may have shaped the world you are living in right now. Before we go any further, we need to understand something foundational. The beings at the center of this account are not minor figures. They are called the Watchers, a name that already tells you something about their original purpose. In the book of Daniel, the word Watcher appears as a title for angelic beings of tremendous authority. In the Book of Enoch, these same beings are described as 200 in number, gathered on the summit of Mount Hermon, bound together by an oath so serious that they gave it a name, because they all knew what they were about to do was irreversible. Their leader is named Semyaza, and the decision they made on that mountain was not impulsive, it was calculated. They looked down at the daughters of men and they wanted them. But more than desire, what drove them was something closer to intention, because what they brought with them when they descended was not just physical presence, they brought knowledge, specific, detailed, transformative knowledge that Enoch lists by name, by teacher, by category. This is where the account becomes something that reaches beyond ancient history and lands directly inside the world we inhabit. Because the knowledge the Watchers transmitted was not abstract or philosophical, it was practical. It was the kind of knowledge that changes civilizations. Azazel, one of the chief Watchers, taught men how to make swords, shields, and coats of mail. He revealed the secrets of metals, how to work them, how to weaponize them. He taught women the art of ornamentation, bracelets, cosmetics, the dyeing of cloth. Another Watcher named Barakel revealed the secrets of astrology. Kokabel taught the reading of the stars. Ezekiel revealed the knowledge of the clouds. Arakiel taught the signs of the earth. Shamsiel taught the signs of the sun. When you read this list slowly, something begins to settle over you. This is not a list of dark arts invented in shadows. This is a list of the foundational disciplines of human civilization. Metallurgy, astronomy, cosmology, military technology, the arts of beauty and appearance. These are the pillars upon which empires are built. And according to the Book of Enoch, humanity did not discover them through slow, patient ingenuity across generations. They were given, transmitted, taught by beings who were never supposed to teach them. The question this raises is one of the most searching questions you can ask. Why would this knowledge be forbidden in the first place? What is dangerous about knowing how to read the stars? What is wrong with understanding how metal can be shaped? The answer, when you sit with it long enough, is not what most people expect. The problem was not the knowledge itself in isolation. The problem was the timing, the source, and the severing of dependence on God that came with it. When the Watchers gave humanity these tools, they were not liberating people. They were displacing them, cutting them off from the slow, sacred, divinely guided unfolding that God had intended for human development. There is a parallel here that the New Testament does not ignore. When Paul writes in 2 Corinthians that Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light, he is describing a pattern that began long before the cross. The most effective deceptions are not obviously dark. They arrive dressed in brilliance, in usefulness, in the appearance of empowerment. The Watchers did not come to humanity bearing obvious evil. They came bearing things that looked like gifts, and that is precisely what made their transmission so catastrophic. The Book of Enoch tells us that after this knowledge spread across the earth, violence increased, corruption intensified. The earth became filled with a kind of darkness that was not merely moral, it was structural. It was embedded in the very tools and systems that civilization was being built upon. And God saw it. And God responded. We are standing at the very beginning of something that stretches far beyond a single teaching moment. The knowledge the Watchers gave to humanity created consequences that rippled outward across generations, across continents, across the entirety of pre-flood civilization. And those consequences, we are going to trace one thread at a time. If this is the kind of truth you have been hungry for, the kind that the institutional church rarely touches, make sure you subscribe to this channel right now so you never miss what is coming. And I want to tell you about something that can take everything we are uncovering here even deeper. The link in the first pinned comment leads to our premium illustrated biblical mystery guide, The Forbidden Book of Enoch, what it reveals about the Watchers, giants, and the world before the flood. This is not a surface-level overview. It is a full, richly illustrated journey through one of the most suppressed texts in all of biblical history. Every chapter, every revelation, brought to life with images that make these ancient realities vivid and unforgettable. If the Book of Enoch has ever stirred something in you, this guide was made for that hunger. Do not let this moment pass without checking it out. To understand what the Watchers truly unleashed upon the ancient world, you have to go beyond the list of forbidden teachings and ask a deeper question. What happened to the people who received this knowledge? What did it do to them? Not just politically, not just militarily, but spiritually. Because the Book of Enoch does not present this transmission as neutral information passing between teacher and student. It presents it as a contamination, a rupture in the fabric of what human life was supposed to be. And the first place that rupture became visible was in the bodies and behavior of the children the Watchers fathered. Genesis 6:4 names them plainly, the Nephilim, giants in the earth, men of renown. But the Book of Enoch expands this picture with a depth that Genesis only gestures toward. These were not simply large human beings, they were hybrid creatures, carrying within them the genetic and spiritual signature of two realms that were never designed to merge. And they were hungry in a way that normal human hunger cannot describe. Enoch tells us that these giants consumed everything. They devoured the labor of men until there was nothing left to take. Then they turned on the animals. Then they turned on each other. And this is the detail that should stop you completely, they began to drink blood. This is not incidental language. In the Hebrew scriptures, blood is life. God told Noah directly in Genesis 9:4 that the blood is never to be consumed, because the life of the flesh is in the blood. The Nephilim were not merely violent, they were desecrating the very boundary between life and death, between the sacred and the profane. But the violence of the giants was only one layer of the catastrophe, because alongside that physical destruction, the forbidden knowledge itself was reshaping human society from the inside. Think about what it means when a civilization suddenly has access to advanced metallurgy, to weapons that can be forged with precision, to cosmetic arts that manipulate appearance, to astrological systems that claim to predict and control destiny. These are not neutral tools. Each one of them, introduced at that moment in human history, carried a specific spiritual danger. They pointed people away from God and toward systems, toward power, toward the idea that human beings could secure their own futures through knowledge rather than through trust in the Creator. The prophet Isaiah understood this pattern centuries later when he wrote in Isaiah 47 about Babylon, a civilization that had placed its faith in astrologers, in stargazers, in those who predicted by the new moons. He called it a weariness, a spiritual exhaustion. Because when you replace dependence on God with dependence on esoteric systems, you do not become stronger, you become hollow. And the pre-flood world, saturated as it was with Watcher-given knowledge, was becoming exactly that, a civilization of extraordinary capability and catastrophic emptiness. There is something else in the Book of Enoch that very few teachers slow down long enough to address. The forbidden knowledge was not transmitted randomly. Specific Watchers were assigned to specific disciplines. This was organized, structured. It had the shape of a curriculum, as if the descent of the Watchers was not a moment of weakness or impulse, but a deliberate strategy to reshape human civilization according to a different design than God's. Enoch 8 lists the teachers and their subjects with the precision of a school registry. And when you read it with that frame, not as mythology, but as the record of a spiritual architecture imposed on humanity, the implications are staggering. Because it means that what the Watchers built was not just chaos. What they built was an alternative order, a system of knowledge, power, and spiritual orientation that mimicked the order God intended, but was rooted in rebellion rather than in love. And humanity, for the most part, embraced it, not because people were evil, but because the knowledge was genuinely useful. The weapons worked, the stars gave real patterns, the metals were strong, the beauty arts were effective. People experienced real results and mistook those results for blessing. This is one of the oldest and most persistent deceptions in human history. Jude 1:6 reminds us that the angels who did not keep their proper domain, who left their own habitation, God has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day. That language, their proper domain, is crucial. The Watchers did not just sin sexually by taking human wives. They violated the structure of creation itself. They stepped outside the boundaries of their design and dragged humanity into the space outside its own boundaries as well. And the result was a world that functioned impressively, even brilliantly, but was fundamentally disordered at its core. 2 Peter 2:4 carries the same weight. God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment. Peter is not speaking abstractly. He is speaking of a historical event with historical consequences. The Watchers fell. Their offspring terrorized the earth. Their knowledge corrupted human civilization. And God, who sees with absolute clarity what we so easily miss, looked upon everything that had unfolded and determined that it could not continue. What was coming next was not punishment in the way we usually imagine punishment, a divine reaction born of anger. What was coming was more like a reset, a necessary, heartbreaking, utterly decisive act of restoration, because the world that the Watchers had built, with all its power and all its splendor, was not the world God had spoken into being. It was a counterfeit, and counterfeits, no matter how convincing they appear, cannot stand forever before the original. The cry of the earth itself was rising, and heaven was listening. There is a moment in the Book of Enoch that is unlike anything else in ancient literature. It is the moment when the cries of the earth reach heaven, not metaphorically, literally. Enoch describes the souls of men crying out, the blood of the slain calling upward, the groaning of the land itself rising like a prayer that cannot be silenced, and heaven hears it. 4 archangels, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, stand before the throne of God, and they present what they have seen below. The earth has become a place of devastation. The Watchers have corrupted everything they touched, and the question before God is not whether to respond. The question is how. What follows in the text is one of the most remarkable divine deliberations ever recorded outside of canonical scripture. God speaks to each archangel in turn, assigning specific tasks with the precision of a commander addressing his generals. To Raphael, he says, "Bind Azazel hand and foot, cast him into the darkness, open the desert in Dudael, and throw him there." To Gabriel, he assigns the task of moving against the bastard offspring, the Nephilim, turning them against one another until they destroy themselves in mutual slaughter. To Michael, he gives the responsibility of binding Semyaza and his companions, the leaders of the descent in the valleys of the earth until the day of judgment. Read slowly. What God is doing here is not reactive, it is surgical. Each Watcher who corrupted a specific domain is being addressed with a corresponding judgment. Azazel, who taught weapons and war, is buried in stone and darkness. The giants, who consumed and destroyed, are turned on each other. The leaders who organized the rebellion are bound, not destroyed but bound, awaiting a judgment that has a specific time and a specific form. There is a theology embedded in this structure that the institutional church has largely failed to teach. God's judgment is not chaos answering chaos. It is order reimposing itself on what disorder has disfigured. The Book of Enoch then does something breathtaking. It shows us Enoch himself being drawn into this unfolding drama. The Watchers, facing their judgment, ask Enoch, a human being, the man who walked with God, as Genesis 5:24 describes, to carry their petition before the throne. They ask him to intercede for them. And in one of the most quietly devastating moments in all of ancient literature, Enoch goes before God on their behalf, and God's answer is no. Not a gentle redirection, a clear final no. Their petition is rejected, their fate is sealed, and Enoch is sent back not with mercy to offer them, but with a message of condemnation to deliver. Why does this matter? Because it reveals something about the nature of what the Watchers did that goes beyond their individual sins. They had not merely broken a rule, they had dismantled something irreplaceable, the boundary between heaven and earth, between angelic existence and human existence, between divine knowledge and human readiness to receive it. These were not arbitrary restrictions. They were the architecture of a sacred order. And when that architecture was shattered, the damage was not something that a simple apology or petition could repair. Some ruptures require more than forgiveness. They require rebuilding from the foundation. This is the moment where the vision Enoch receives in chapters 12 through 16 becomes almost unbearably significant. God tells Enoch to say to the Watchers, "You were in heaven, but the mysteries of heaven were not revealed to you. You knew a worthless mystery, and in your hardness of heart you have told this to women, and through these mysteries the women and the men cause evil to increase on the earth." That phrase, a worthless mystery, is devastating in its precision. Because the Watchers did not give humanity true divine knowledge. They gave humanity a fragment, a shadow, knowledge stripped of its proper context, its proper timing, its proper relationship to the giver of all wisdom. Proverbs 1:7 tells us that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and that fools despise wisdom and instruction. The knowledge the Watchers transmitted bypassed that beginning entirely. It handed humanity the tools of civilization without the wisdom to use them rightly. It was like giving a child a sharp blade and calling it a gift. The blade is real, the capability it provides is real, but without the maturity to wield it, without the moral framework to govern its use, it becomes an instrument of destruction rather than a tool of flourishing. And this is why the pre-flood world, for all its apparent advancement, moved steadily and with terrifying speed toward total collapse. Not because the people in it were uniquely wicked in some way that we are not, but because they were living inside a system of knowledge that had been handed to them outside of God's order, outside of His timing, outside of the relational framework in which true wisdom is always embedded. They had the instruments. They had lost the song. Enoch's vision stretches across the heavens and shows him the consequences radiating outward, not just into the immediate pre-flood era, but forward through time, into ages yet to come. The forbidden knowledge did not die with the flood. It survived. It mutated. It embedded itself into the memory and the practice of civilizations that rose after the waters receded. And this is the thread that we must follow next, because the story did not end when the rain began to fall. The earth was washed, but some things are not so easily erased. When the waters of the flood finally receded, and Noah's feet touched dry ground again, something had changed forever. The world that emerged from beneath those waters was not the same world that had been submerged. The mountains were the same. The sky was the same. But the spiritual landscape had shifted in ways that most Bible teachers never fully explore. Because the question that the flood did not answer, the question that hangs silently over Genesis 9 and 10, is this: what happened to the knowledge? The Watchers were bound. The Nephilim had destroyed one another and been destroyed by the flood. But the transmission of forbidden knowledge does not work like a physical object that can be buried under water and lost forever. Knowledge lives in memory. It lives in practice. It lives in the patterns of thought and culture that human beings carry with them, even when they do not fully understand where those patterns came from. And the post-flood world, built by the sons and daughters of Noah, did not begin in a vacuum. It began with human beings who carried, somewhere in the deep memory of their lineage, the echo of everything the Watchers had taught. The Table of Nations in Genesis 10 traces the spreading of humanity across the earth after the flood. And what we see almost immediately is the re-emergence of the very patterns that had characterized the pre-flood world. Cities, kingdoms, military power, astrological systems, mystery religions built around secret knowledge transmitted through initiatory rites. The ziggurat at Babylon was not an architectural accident. The priest-king systems of Sumer were not invented from nothing. The mystery schools of Egypt, with their elaborate cosmologies and their carefully guarded esoteric traditions, did not arise in a cultural vacuum. They were, in ways that archaeology and ancient literature both point toward, continuations, however imperfect and fragmented, of what had been transmitted before the flood. The Sumerian king list, one of the oldest historical documents in human possession, describes kings who reigned before the flood for tens of thousands of years. These are not the lifespans of ordinary human beings. They are the reigns of a different kind of ruler, the kind that the Book of Enoch and the Book of Giants both describe as products of the Watcher-human union. And when the flood comes in the Sumerian record, the kingship does not disappear. It descends from heaven again. It reasserts itself. It finds new vessels and new cities and continues. This parallel between the biblical account and the Mesopotamian record is not coincidental. Both are reaching toward the same underlying historical reality from different cultural angles. The knowledge that was given before the flood left a residue, and that residue became the seed of every great ancient civilization that followed. The pyramids of Egypt, the astronomical precision of Stonehenge, the impossible stonework at Baalbek, where single blocks weighing over 1,000 tons were quarried, transported, and fitted with a precision that modern engineering struggles to replicate. These structures are not monuments to human ingenuity alone. They are, in their own way, monuments to a transmission, to knowledge that came from somewhere beyond the ordinary capacity of ancient human beings working with primitive tools. Job 38:31 records God asking Job a question that has never lost its edge. Can you bind the cluster of the Pleiades or loose the belt of Orion? It is a question about the stars, about astronomical realities that only a being of transcendent knowledge could fully command. And yet the ancient world, from Mesopotamia to Egypt to the Americas, demonstrated an understanding of stellar cycles, of precession, of astronomical alignments that modern scholars are still working to fully comprehend. Where did that knowledge come from? The Book of Enoch gives us an answer that no mainstream academic institution is prepared to accept, but that the ancient texts themselves insist upon. The Watchers did not merely teach, they initiated. They established a lineage of transmission that survived the flood, not in written documents that could be destroyed, but in living traditions carried by men and women who understood that what they held was sacred, or at least powerful. The mystery religions of the ancient world, from the Eleusinian mysteries of Greece to the Hermetic traditions of Egypt, all shared a common structure, an outer teaching for the uninitiated, and an inner teaching, esoteric, hidden, transformative, reserved for those who had proven themselves worthy of receiving it. That structure is not a human invention. It is a mirror of what the Watchers themselves established when they chose specific human recipients for specific categories of knowledge. Ephesians 6:12 makes a statement that most Christians read in a personal and devotional frame, but that carries enormous historical weight. We do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. Paul is not describing a metaphor, he is describing an architecture, a layered, organized, intentional system of spiritual opposition that has been operating since before the flood and has never stopped operating. The rulers of the darkness of this age are not abstract forces. They are in the framework that Enoch's vision provides, the continuation of what the Watchers set in motion, an alternative order, still functioning, still transmitting, still working to keep humanity oriented toward knowledge, without God rather than toward God as the source of all true knowledge. This is not a comfortable picture, but it is an honest one, and the reason it matters so deeply is that understanding where these systems came from is the first step toward being free of their influence. You cannot break a chain you do not know is there. And for too many people, The chains of this ancient transmission are invisible precisely because they have been so thoroughly woven into the fabric of what we call civilization, culture, and even religion itself. The post-flood world rebuilt what the pre-flood world had lost, but it rebuilt it imperfectly, incompletely, and in many cases unknowingly. The echo of the Watchers was everywhere, and it was pointing, always, toward one final confrontation. If the story of the Watchers ended with the flood, it would be a remarkable piece of ancient history, sobering, instructive, but ultimately confined to a distant past. What makes it something far more urgent, far more personal, is the realization that the New Testament writers did not treat the Watchers as a closed chapter. They treated them as an ongoing reality. They wrote about them in the present tense of spiritual conflict, as if the transmission that began on Mount Hermon had never truly been interrupted, only driven underground into the hidden places of human culture and human hearts, where it has continued its work, generation after generation. Jesus himself pointed toward this when he said in Matthew 24:37, "As the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be." Most teachers read this verse and focus on the element of surprise, people eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, unaware of what is coming. And that element is real and important. But there is another layer here that the context of the Book of Enoch illuminates with startling clarity. The days of Noah were not merely days of moral carelessness. They were days of a specific spiritual contamination, days when the boundary between the divine and the human had been violated, when forbidden knowledge had reshaped civilization, when the Nephilim walked the earth and the Watchers' influence permeated every layer of society. Jesus is not just saying that the end will catch people off guard. He is saying that the end will arrive in a world that structurally resembles what the pre-flood world had become. And when you look at the world we inhabit today with that frame in mind, something comes into focus that is deeply uncomfortable and deeply important. We live in a civilization of extraordinary technological capability. We have access to tools of communication, of destruction, of biological manipulation, of artificial intelligence that no previous generation in recorded history has possessed. We are, in many ways, the most knowledgeable civilization that has existed since the flood. And yet, by almost every meaningful spiritual and moral metric, we are also a civilization that has lost its orientation toward God with a thoroughness that is breathtaking in its scope. We have the instruments. We have again lost the song. The parallel is not accidental. The Book of Enoch understood something that most modern theology has quietly set aside: that the spiritual forces behind the transmission of forbidden knowledge did not retire after the flood. They adapted. They found new expressions, new vehicles, new cultural forms through which to continue the same ancient project: the construction of a human civilization oriented around power, knowledge, and self-sufficiency, rather than around humility, dependence, and love for God. Every age has its version of the Watcher transmission. Every generation has been offered, in some form, the knowledge that looks like a gift and functions as a displacement. Daniel 2:43 contains a verse that biblical scholars have debated for centuries. Speaking of the final world empire, Daniel writes that they will mingle with the seed of men, but they will not adhere to one another, just as iron does not mix with clay. The identity of they in this verse has generated enormous discussion. But read through the lens of what Enoch reveals about the pre-flood world, about beings who mingled their nature with the seed of men and produced something that was neither fully one thing nor fully another. The resonance of Daniel's language becomes impossible to ignore. The pattern that began with the Watchers, it seems, does not end in the ancient past. It reaches forward into the final chapter of human history. Revelation 9 describes beings released from the bottomless pit in the last days. Creatures that have a king over them, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon and in Greek is Apollyon, the destroyer. And the description of their activity, tormenting men, operating under spiritual authority, moving with organized purpose against humanity, carries the unmistakable shape of what the Book of Enoch describes as the activity of bound spirits awaiting their release. The judgment that came upon the Watchers was not their final end. It was a containment, And the Book of Enoch is explicit that containment has a time limit. The bound ones are held until the day of judgment, but before that day, something is released. This is not territory that should produce fear in the heart of someone who is rooted in Christ. John 1:5 declares with quiet, immovable authority, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." Has not, cannot, will not. The entire sweep of the Watcher story, from the descent on Mount Hermon to the binding in darkness to the echoes that run through every civilization since, exists within a larger story that is moving toward a conclusion that was never in doubt. The forbidden knowledge that the Watchers transmitted was powerful, but it was never more powerful than the word that spoke the universe into existence. And that word, John tells us, became flesh and dwelt among us. What Jesus brought into the world was not simply a moral teaching or a spiritual philosophy. He brought the restoration of the very thing the Watchers had shattered. The right relationship between heaven and earth, between divine knowledge and human readiness to receive it, between the Creator and the creatures made in His image. Where the Watchers descended in rebellion and brought corruption, Christ descended in obedience and brought redemption. Where the Watchers gave knowledge that displaced God, Christ gave a spirit that leads into all truth, not as an alternative to relationship with God, but as the deepest possible expression of it. Colossians 2:3 says that in Christ are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge, all of them, not a fragment, not a curriculum designed to empower people outside of God's order, all the treasures, every genuine insight, every true understanding, every real illumination of the mystery of existence. It is hidden in Him, and it is accessible only through Him. This is the answer to the Watcher transmission. Not more knowledge, not a counter-esoteric system, not an alternative curriculum of hidden wisdom. The answer is a person, and the person has already come. The ancient transmission is still active, but so is the redemption. And the question that every generation must answer, including ours, is the same question that stood before the pre-flood world. Whose knowledge will you live by, and whose voice will you trust? What the Watchers taught humanity was never just about weapons or stars or the secrets of metals. It was about a choice, the same choice that has echoed through every generation since. Will we seek knowledge rooted in God, or knowledge that replaces Him? That question is still alive today. It is alive in you right now, in the way you read Scripture, in the way you seek truth, in the way you choose whose voice to follow. The story of Enoch is not a relic of the ancient world. It is a mirror held up to our own time, and the light it reflects points, always, back to Christ, the only answer to everything the Watchers broke. Thank you so much for watching this all the way through. It means more than you know. If this stirred something in you, please subscribe to this channel, leave a like, and drop a comment below. And do not forget to check the first pinned comment for our premium illustrated biblical mystery guide on the Book of Enoch. Keep watching. The next videos are already appearing on your screen.